Okay. So we were talking about NURB surfaces. I would like to go through it, or just explain it once again what NURB surfaces mean in this Rhino interface. So as I told you guys, there are a few factors which defines a NURB surface. Factors being their control points and the direction. So if you look at this surface that I have created for now, and if I just rebuild this surface again, so you can see these arrows, right? So it mostly indicates the direction of this particular plane. So the red arrow indicates X direction, or let's say U direction, and the green arrows indicate the Y direction. So this surface is formed particularly by the points at these particular vectors. And if I just show this a bit more clear to you, if I on the points, you can see that so you will be able to see all the points that eventually forms my surface. So let's consider this point here. Since the arrow, or since the let me just close some windows first for my computer to process a bit faster. Let me try to rebuild this again and just try to make it a bit more easier. So I'm just going to change the number of points in U's and V's, just for the sake of explanation. Okay. And if I on the control points for this particular surface, you can see that these are more or less the point which defines my surface. Okay. If I change, or if I move any of these surfaces, so let's say this is my U direction and this is my Y direction, V direction. So in that case, this point in particular would be U. In U it would be 1 unit, and in U it would be 1 unit, and in V it would be 0, right? So it would be U1 and V0. Similarly, if we do for this, it would be U1, V1. So it basically considers all these points and the degree of those points. If you change any of these location of the location of these points for now, for some if you change the location of these points in your design space, if you move this point, let's try to move this point, you would see that my surface eventually okay, if I change this point, you can see that my control point has moved to some extent, and my surface still remains smooth. It's because I have provided the degree of this surface. I have just changed the degree of this. If I change the degree of this surface to anything below 3, I would get more less smooth, in fact, layer. If I increase the degree, it would be more smoother. I can increase the number of points so that I could control my surface a bit more, in fact, from different points, and I can just keep my degree the same. So let's say I have this, and you can see like the cross section or the lines that defines the surface eventually changes because I have now more number of points that makes this particular surface. So if I change this, if I move this point, I could see that I have a better control over my surface, even though like before, as my points were less, the smoothness was overall distributed, but since now my points are more, you can see that I have better control over making the surface a bit more smoother. So you can use this rebuild command for any surface to just create a surface and in general rebuild it with the number of points that you require. So I can just rebuild it with whatever number of points I require it to be. So if I want to reduce the points, I can just say I need 4 points. So I could say that you can see the points here and the normal of at those points as well, and I can see the degree of those points, and I can just say okay, and it should eventually change to 4 points. Okay, so that's one way you can start to play with your surface after I mean, even if you create a basic surface from plane, you can just start to play with this surface right by rebuilding it. And there was another property that I in fact shared, that they have a peculiar there's a peculiar way of there's a bit of peculiarity in some ways where when you are making a hole, let's say in this particular surface. I'm just trying to create a hole in this surface now. I can just split this surface by this particular object. Okay. So now if you see this, there's a hole in this surface. Okay. If I still on my control points here, I would see that the properties of the surface remain the same. Like, I see that this surface is still continuous, it just has a hole in between, which mathematically is not considered it doesn't mathematically changes the property of this particular surface. But you can see that if you would have tried it in any other mesh modeling software, you would see that you would see this surface getting triangulated or having quads or kind of any n-gons that defines this surface. But in this case, when you're talking about nerve surface, it doesn't really lose that property of that surface having control points. So this property is not lost in the in this particular in any nerve surface if you create a hole in between. So that's something it's good to know while you are modeling with nerve surface. It might not amaze you if you might attack if you just tend to fall in some confusion sometimes that why is my model not reacting the way I would like to see it. But sometimes these kind of errors might happen, and so it's better if you know the software inside out and understand the properties or the mathematical way of creating those curves, surface geometries. So moving ahead, we did sweep one rail in the part 1 today. I'm just gonna go I'm just gonna go I'm just gonna show you all the later commands and some properties of a surface that we would be working on today. So after sweep 1, as I showed you that it takes a rail and a cross section to create a geometry. I'm just gonna run through it once more. I'm just gonna say sweep 1, and I'm gonna keep my record history on, or in fact just keeping my record history on. Select rail and then select the cross section. Once that's done, I could see that there is some things forming here. I'm happy with my result. Maybe I would like to change my surface. So since my record history was on, now I could start to manipulate my surface the way I would like to do it, and the model would get updated. So you can then definitely make use of this particular property. So you can try different stuff that you would like, and it's something quite cool. Similarly, if we go to when we go to a sweep 2 rail, so we can understand that sweep 2 rail would involve 2 rails and 1 cross section. So if I just, let's say, manipulate this curve a bit, let's say I have this curve, okay, so I'm just gonna move this point to my midpoint, and I'm just gonna say that now this becomes my rail for this particular geometry, and this becomes my cross section. Okay, so I'm just gonna keep my record history on, and I'm gonna say sweep 2, or I can go to my surfaces and say sweep 2 rail. It's gonna ask me for the first rail, it's gonna ask me for the second rail, and it's gonna ask me for a cross section. When I press enter, well, it's gonna ask from where should the seam line start. Maybe I could say I want to start the seam line from here, and this is something that I would get. I could play with these parameters which are provided in my option box to have better control over my swept geometry. So you can try to see, it says maintain height. You can rebuild your surface with whatever number of points you want. So it depends. So let's say let's not change anything as such. You can add some slashes. So if, for example, if you wanna just change the way your surface is forming. You can just change the seam lines on both your rail curves, and yeah, you can just press OK for it. And what happens if now I start to change my cross section? So it should be reflected in my geometry as well, because I have kept the record history on. If you would have kept the record history off, your model might not get updated like the way it's getting updated for me right now. If you want to try it, you can just give it a try. My record history is not on anymore. I want to do a sweep 2 between the first rail, the second rail, and the cross section. If I do this, and okay, let's see. So this is something that I get. Now if I try to change my curve, it should not get updated. So as you can see, I have changed my cross section, but my geometry remains the same. The reason being that my record history is set off. So in that case, it doesn't really matter if I change my cross section after I create my geometry. So that's about sweep 2. Similarly, you can find a lot of other commands. I think we all might be aware of this command called revolve. So I'm just gonna use this particular cross section for now, and I'm just gonna use most of the things, or make most of the things on this curve only. So if you have your curve drawn in a plane, and if you would like to revolve this curve around an x-axis, you can use a revolve command. So for example, I have this curve. I would say surface and revolve. You can just start my revolution from here, and the end of the axis would be z-axis. So make sure that it's not x or y axis, or the results might be unpredictable. If you want to just make sure that it's your z-axis, you can just use your 4 viewports. I can just double click on that, and I should be having my 4 viewports, and I can see that in my front view I have something that goes in the z-axis. So once that is done, it would ask me for a start angle. Let's say my start angle is 0, and let's say my revolution should be around 270 degrees. So I'm not going to rotate 360 degrees, so I'm just going to change. Yeah, so you can see that it just revolved around that particular axis that I had created while applying the revolve command, and eventually it revolved for 270 degrees as I set the parameter. So that was about revolve command. Next is rail revolve. So let's say you have some geometry which is your rail, and some curve which could be, let me see, where am I? Okay, so let me just make an ellipse for now. That's it. Okay, so that's my ellipse, and if I just rebuild this curve with number of points, let's say 6 points of degree 3. I could start to maybe change this a bit more. So what happens here is, I can do a similar revolve, but this time the revolve would happen with respect, considering the rail as well, the path that it takes while revolution. So go to surface, rail revolve, select the rail curve, enter. Select it asks, the first is your profile curve, which is this. Select the rail curve, which is this, and start of the revolution. So I'm just gonna pick the center. Let me keep my center on, and I hope I should find the center. Let me check from the top view. Okay, so that's, if your smart track is on, you would see that there are this kind of white line or guideline appears in the direction that you try to move your mouse. That's basically your smart track, so it's quite helpful. Okay, it asks for an N, so I'm just gonna do it in my front view, in my Z axis, and that's the end of it. What did I do? Okay, I think I just, my axis, I don't know what axis did I choose, but the result is quite unpredictable. Let me do it again. So set scale. This one. Select my profile curve, select my rail curve, start of the revolve axis, and I go in front, and of my revolve axis. Yeah. So now you can see that. So this. I think I have kept my record history on, maybe. If not, then I won't be able to change. Yeah, I didn't keep my record history on. Let me try it again with my record history on. So I have my revolve curve, rail revolve command on. I select let me put my record history on first. Select the profile curve, select the rail curve, and we need to start the select the profile curve, select the rail curve. Let's start from here in the front view again, and select the Z-axis. Okay. Keep your auto on maybe. Yeah. So now you can just start to change your profile curve, or your rail curve, and your geometry should be updated. Yeah, so now it revolves with respect to your geometry, with respect to your cross section that you have provided, or the rail that you have provided, and you can start to change that rail as well because your record history was kept on. So and you can start to play with this. It's quite fascinating sometimes, and you can just go on and on with the iterations and the results that you could produce from all of these commands. Moving on, next is curve network. So you have some bunch of curves and you would like to create a surface between those curves. So you have this command in surfaces called curve network. You select these curves and you press enter. You should be able to see that there is a surface formed between these four curves, and you can now start to change the parameters on your option box, and you can see you can't see anything for the moment because nothing that's the position or the loose stage for both the curves. So in this case there is less that we could explore, but you can try different curves and try to create and you could try to create some different results. But I mean, this is some command that you might not use more oftenly, but it's good to know about it. Next is corner point. Corner point is when you are provided, you can just specify the four corners of a surface, and you can form a surface between these four corner points. So that's a very basic form of a surface. Next is edge curve. Again the same, you have some bunch of curves and you can select or let's say you have you have a surface and you are unable to form let's make a surface for now, or geometry, and let's say that let me just cut this. Okay, so let me split this one. So let's say I have this surface and I would like to form a surface between these four curves. So what you could do is you could go to surface, you could go to edge curve, and you can select the open edges 2, 3 and 4. You can see that my surface is formed. You can flip this surface to get an even result from here. But that's a very cool way of creating an edge between creating a surface between four edges. So that's edge curve. What's a planar curve? So in a planar curve, let's say you have this curve which is quite randomly distributed all around, and you would like to form a surface between okay, so you would like to form a surface between this you would like to form a surface of this boundary. If it's there in a plane, in this case it's there in my XY plane, so I could create a surface from this particular curve. You can go to surface and you can go to surface and you can just do a planar curve. You can select this and now you can see that the surface has been created. So that's your planar curve. I would leave point grid up to you. I think you can explore it better. I'm sure you won't be using this command a lot, but it's just there for your reference in this exercise file particularly. So if you guys want to try it, then definitely go ahead with just refer to the reference file and try what point grid means for creating a surface. So we have mostly completed the primitives for creating a surface. Now I would show you what are some utilities which could help you change the surface. Utilities such as extrusion or say extending, chamfering or filling, blending. I'm sure now you are quite aware of these basic terminologies from our previous session. We learned in curves that curve different ways to chamfer, different ways to blend. So I would just go through all of these utilities in a moment from now. Okay, moving ahead, now we would see some utility tools that we could use for creating the surface. I'm sure you guys might be aware of this one, extruding your curve, which is like a very generic way of thinking about a curve forming its surface in z direction. If you have a curve of whatever and you would like to extrude, you can just say extrude curve, or in the surface you should be able to say extrude straight. So you can specify the units and the direction in which the extrusion should happen. Let's say if I want an extrusion in z direction, so let's say I would like to extrude a curve to form a surface. I would just go to surface, extrude curve straight, and I could just specify the units, let's say 10 units or let's say 20 units, and you could see that my surface would be formed in z direction by extruding that particular curve. There are many ways to extrude a curve. Some other ways that Rhino gives a possibility for is extruding along a curve, extruding to a point, tapering, ribbon, or normal to surfaces. So I'm just going to show you some of them. You can explore these commands on your own. You can just go to surface, extrude curve. Let's say I want to go do an extrusion to a point. So this is my, and I can just extrude it to a point. Sometimes it could be difficult to find a point in Z direction, so what you can do is you can go to your front, or you can just on all your viewports, and you can just this is still, it's not the best way, so but yeah, I mean, you can just, so if I would like to do an extrusion, so there's a way in which you could try to use all your viewports to find your right point. Just press Alt, just press, okay, just press Control in the first Control and select the point which you would like to select in the first viewport, and again Control and select the point that you would like to select in your second viewport, and you should be able to find a point with respect to two views. So that's one way you could try to find the right point in Z direction if you're finding it difficult in marking a point in Z. But that was point extruding a surface to a point. If you would like to explore the extrude curve command and having a tapered extrusion, then you could just select the curve and you can just specify the draft angle. In this case, let's keep the draft angle as 45 maybe. That's a bit weird, maybe negative of 45. Let's extrude with 45, let's say 0.25. You can just change your draft angle. I have selected. Instead, let's do a draft angle of -10. Okay, so now you can see that it's getting a bit wide as I go on the top. Okay. So that's an extrusion with a tapered form for a curve. So that's extrusion with a curve. Another cool command that I would like to show you is a patch command. So imagine that you have some bunch of curves which are not planar. So if, for example, what I mean by non-planar curves are let's say we have these curves, and that's something which is formed in a plane. So if I do a planar surface, there would be a surface formed here. But what happens, let me just keep this result on one side, and I'm gonna apply a similar command again once I just move this curve. So I would try to move this curve, move the control points in different directions, and I would expect that I should get a surface between this closed curve. Okay, so Now if I perform a similar command, which is planar curve, I would not get any surface here. It says no face were made because the curve that we are selecting is not planar. So how do we form a surface between those between such curves? So there's a way in which you could do that. You can use patch command. So using a patch command, you could just form your own surface with number of points in use and number of points in use and whatever it be that you choose. More the number of points, more accurate the surface. So you can, if you select say 30 surface spans for use and use, you can see that my surface is getting more and more accurate. So that's basically a patch command, and that's something which you could use for any curve for such kind of uneven surfaces or very organic surfaces. So if it's a plane, if the curve is formed in a plane, you can definitely use a planar surface and you could form a curve in this way. But if it's non-planar, then you can use this particular method to form a surface. So I can use my touch command again. Let's say I just want to have 4 and 4. So you can see that now my curve is a bit more smoother because I don't have I have less points in between. But if I had more spans in between, I would have had much more accurate surface which respects the curvature of the curve from all different views. So that was about patch command. Next is drape. So drape, you can imagine this command as similar to putting a cloth over for any geometry. So let's make some geometries here. Let's make some spheres. Let's make some spheres. Okay, I have these spheres here, and let's say that I would like to use a drape surface and then drape, and you just have to drag the window. You can just come to your top view, you can drag the window that you would like to drape. So for now, so I have already selected the spacing. Let my spacing be 10. So this is my so if you see this, I mean, you can imagine that I have put a cloth on this particular geometry, and this is what I got from the drape command. So you could, I mean, I'm not sure how could you use this particular command, but of course there's always a possibility you might require it for your design, so you could definitely give it a try. Cool. Now coming to the more utilities, so I'm just gonna go through most of them very quickly. I'm sure these are not some new terms for all of us, and this is similar to all the utilities that we have used for curve, and it would be similar for the next set of utilities which might come for solids as well. And so starting with extend surface, extend surface, select the edge to extend. So let's take this edge, and you need to specify the extension points. You can either use your mouse to just show the extension point, or you can just set an extension saying, let's say 2. So I should be getting okay. So the first utility that we would be going through is extend surface. To extend a surface, you select the edge of the surface that you would like to extend. You can either use your mouse to extend the surface, or else you can just specify the extend length. So I'm just saying like it should increase by 3x of its length, so eventually it would extend the surface to 3x, as I have mentioned. The next command that we would look into is fillet surface. As we learned in curves, filleting is just giving a radius to giving a radius while blending of two curves. So in this case, you blend two surfaces with a radius. So you have surface, you do fillet surface, you select the first surface, select the second surface, and well, for now my fillet is quite small. So you can change the radius to anything, let's say in this case 0.2. Select the first, select the second, and you should be able to see that my fillet has happened. But okay, I can still try and increase. Let's do one, this surface and this surface. So that's my fillet surface. It's quite straightforward, so it shouldn't be a difficult task for you guys to figure it out. Next is chamfering the surface. You go to surface, chamfer your surface, select the first surface to chamfer. You can set your distance. In this case, let's set the distance to 1 and 0.5. So you select the first surface which would have a chamfer of 1 unit, and the second one which would have a chamfer of 5.5 units. So you can see like the chamfer has happened, and you can see that the first curve has a chamfer length of 1 unit, and the second surface has a chamfer length of 0.5 unit. You can do a connect surface if you have these let's say if you have such open surfaces, you can go to surface, you can do connect surface, and you can select the first edge, and you can select the second edge, and you can connect these surfaces. Also a good feature in Rhino is variable fillet surface. So you can have variable fillets for a particular geometry. So let's say you do a fillet which is variable, so variable fillet surface. So let's say you have your this as your first, this as your second. You can start to like set your own radius. Let's say I'm gonna start from 0.2, and I'm gonna have my maximum to be whatever 0.8. Again, I can add a handle, and I can just change. So I'm just trying to add 2 handles. Okay, And now I'm just gonna change this to, let's say, 2, and let's change this to 0.6. Okay, now I'm just gonna enter, and then I should have kept my so if I do surface variable fillet, select first, select second, and I'm just gonna change this and this, and let's say if I'm gonna add a handle somewhere here, I'm gonna press enter to set the handle there, and then I'm gonna keep my trim and join yes, so that whenever my fillet happens, the rest of the surface is trimmed and joined. So when I do that, I could see that a trim and join has happened, and my fillet is at variable lengths. So I started with 2.5, in between I had somewhere around 1 unit, and then again it was somewhere around 2. So you can start to shape your geometry and add more details by variable fillet surface. You could do the same for variable chamfering surface and also the variable blend surface. So I would suggest you to try this for detailing your geometry. Next is offset surface. So what happens in offset surface? Imagine that you have a surface and you would like to make that surface solid. So you could go to surface, you could select offset surface, and you could specify the distance and the direction in which you would like to offset the surface. So naturally this as these are the normals of this particular curve, this particular surface, it would be offsetted in the direction as shown by these arrows, these white arrows. If you would like to flip this, you can just say flip all, and it would turn on the inside, and you can set your distance to anything, let's say 0.5, and press enter. So as you press enter, you should get something like this. If you would like to have a solid surface, you need to keep your solid as yes, and if you would like to have your corners round, you can keep your corners round as well. So this is a way in which you could give an easy offset to your surface. Now imagine you would like to have variable offsets for a particular surface. So you could do that by this command called variable offset surface, and it asks for a surface that you would like to have offset, and it would ask you to set the variable. So I'm going to set this here, I'm going to set this here, somewhere. So in case you feel that your point is your point is getting sensitive, you can just try to deselect in some of these options, so that you don't just end up having reference of any of the points around. You can add a link handle, so you can just say add handle, and you can just provide this as your handle. You can also say you want to have, you can say that you want to have a handle here. So you could see that I have a variable offset of a particular surface, In this case, I couldn't make this surface solid. I would just have an offset of this surface, um, but it would be a variable offset. So you could try this. You could try this out for some of the things that you are trying to do. Maybe creating a feature wall, or something that interests you, or that suits the requirement of your design. Next command that we would be exploring is a blend curve. So you go to surface, you do a blend curve. So if you have two geometries and you would like to create a blend between these two geometries, you select the edges of these geometries, and it works similar to blending the curve option. As you can see, like I have these handles which I could use for creating or changing my geometry in particular. So I could see that as I change my handle, my results are getting affected. So you can start to detail out your geometries using these commands, and also you could control it better by using the control box. And you can see that this is what I could form from this particular blending. You can just visualize it in a different view. I always stick to a shaded view. That's a better way of working. So that's a blend curve. Now, how about tweening a surface? So as we learned while tweening a curve, it more or less forms tweens between two curves provided. In this case, it forms tweens between two surfaces provided. So when you have two surfaces and you would like to tween them, you provide both the surface, and you could have as many number of surfaces in between. So let's say I have 10. So I can see that my tween has worked here, and I could form surface tweens in this way by tweening a surface. Next is an unrolled surface. So what is an unrolled surface? If you would like to create, or if you would like to form a fabrication model of the geometries that you create on Rhino, you might have to unroll them sometimes to form a developable surface, which could be either laser cut or CNC. So for that matter, you might have to use an unroll surface command, and Rhino makes it very easy by giving you a command that unrolls it for you. You go to surface, you select the surface that you would like to unroll, and you can just do an unroll surface here. Let's see, unroll surface, unroll developable surface, and it's gonna ask if you would like to explode the surface. I would say no, I don't want to explode the surface. It mostly forms an unroll at the center, so it's a bit off center, but you would get some things like this. So now you could use this and you could laser cut this part, and maybe when you try to join it, you would be able to form what you have created here as a surface. So that's an unrolled surface. but unrolled surface might not work, or might not work for a doubly curved surface. What I mean by a doubly curved surface is, let's say you have some things like this and you want to have a surface, inner surface with these curves, rebuild these curves by 4 points, and I'm just gonna make a surface let's say I have some things like this. Okay, so this has curvature in both directions. So there is this curvature and there is this curvature. So in that case, the Gaussian curvature is negative. So that is a reason these kind of curves cannot be unrolled accurately. So if you do an unrolled surface for this particular geometry, it says that unrolling double curved surface will produce inaccurate results, and it might not even bother to unroll it. So in that case, you can use this command called smash, where it's kind of an unroll, but you can imagine like Rhino is just taking this geometry and it's just smashing it on the surface, on the plane. So if you say smash, and if you select the similar, it would still say that there is some inaccuracy in the unrolling, and it would be around 2%. So it gives you enough data to understand that this surface has some technical might not be unrolled even with at most accuracy. So but you could at least find a more or less an inaccurate version of this geometry, which could be explored by using smash command. So that's smash command. So you need to be careful while unrolling any of the doubly curved surfaces. There's a better way to do it would be to divide these in various parts and then try to solve it mathematically for unrolling. But there are also, if you are using Grasshopper, there are already available plugins which might do it efficiently for you. So you can try that. Moving ahead, these are some of the tools which you could explore. So imagine that you have a surface and you tend to cut that surface. So imagine that you have a surface and so I'm just going to keep the reference of this surface to show the difference in the next command that I'm going to explain you. So I'm just going to split this with this curve. Okay, and this is some curve, or this is some plane, and this is some surface that I already have as my reference plane. So if I turn on the points for these planes, I could see that it's more or less a fair result that I could see, that I have 4 corner points, and I could in fact start, if I change any of these corner points, I could change the surface topology as well. But what happens here, if I turn on my surface point, it shows that this is what it's still reference to the actual surface from which we have cut this particular surface. So how do we change that? To do that, you have an additional command called shrink trim surface. So if you go to surface edge, in your surface edit tools, you could find shrink trim surface. So if you do shrink trim surface, you will be asked select the trim surface to shrink, and you select the surface that you want to shrink, and then when you open it, you should find that it eventually fits the curve that you have, or it fits the planar surface that you have dissected from this particular surface. So that's something that you would be using while modeling. It's an efficient command in terms of modeling details. You might require to shrink trim a lot of surfaces and then blending it further or doing further commands. So that's about shrink trim. Now the next command that we would be exploring is quite interesting. I would show you a create curve UV. So what does create curve UV means? So if you go to surface and your I think it's in curve. You have your create UV curves and apply UV curves. So we will be using these commands for exploring this particular technique. So this is in fact a very cool command that I have explored, and this is something that you could use in a lot of your geometries to make some details or create something unique or more dynamic in some ways. So let's say you have this particular, particular curve, and you want to extrude this curve. I'm just gonna give this and I'm just going to rebuild this surface to have better control. So if I do a rebuild, okay, now if I turn my points on, I should see some things like this. What I could do is I could start to transform these geometries. Okay, so imagine that I have some things like this, and I have now what I could do is I could just create or unroll a flat version of this, let's say, by using a create UV curve. Okay, select this is more or less a flat version of this particular geometry that I have selected here. Let's try to create something cool now. Let's say that I'm interested in making not do this, maybe let's do some let's go a bit random for now. Let's say I have some things. Okay, let's use this maybe. This could be interesting. Okay, so let's have these curves here. Okay, now what I would like to do is I would like to create or have these curves projected on this particular surface. So the way I could do it is I could go back to my curves, convert in your curve from object and apply UV curves. So I select point and planar curves on XY plane, which is this, enter it, and this as my surface. You can see that my curves are formed here. Now I can start to make this thing a bit more cooler. I'm just going to take a reference of this particular geometry, and I'm going to start to I'll make some transformation using these curves that I have just projected, and I'm gonna split this with these particular curves. Okay, so you could see that now you can start to project your curves on the geometries that you could create, and the way you could do it is just projecting those curves on this particular using these two commands. So this is a really good way that you could start to transform your geometry or do some things on your geometry by using your curves. And using this method of creating a UV curve and applying that UV curve could really help in creating some things really complex sometimes, and also some things really interesting. I would like to show you an example of this particular method that I have explored, and we will do this in some of our exercise sessions as we go ahead. So I created these curves and I projected these curves on this particular geometry. What I did was I split the geometry and then I just offsetted the splitted geometry to form these kind of exoskeleton. So this could eventually form something really cool like this, and I'm sure like you guys can explore a better version of this maybe, or something much more cooler than this by using create and apply UV command. And I think for this week that stays as a kind of homework for you to try. So form some geometries, make some transformation, and share some cool results using creatively and apply UV command. So thank you all for attending today's session. I hope to see you next week with another topic and more things to explore in Rhino and Grasshopper. Bye.